communication styles. If the work of the relationship is to create a space where we can meet our needs for bonding, that would be where my own needs for bonding can be met and where I can meet the needs of somebody else for bonding. We have to talk about communication. Communication has different aspects. Communication, understanding. So we're going to go into the communication styles. Virginia Satir first came up with the stress styles of communication in her book, People Making and the New People Making. Really what we're talking about is how to communicate. There are ways to communicate that bring people closer, and there are ways to communicate where the bigger issue is actually how we communicate it rather than the issue itself. So we're going to move forward and we're going to start with the aspects of communication. These are the three basic aspects of communication. Of course, there's a lot of factors and there's so much that goes into this. But at the very basic level, communication has three different aspects. It has self, what is going on for me, what is true for me, what I know of me in this communication, and everything that has to do with the self. The other, what is true for that other person, everything that has to do with that person's experiences and what that person's going through and what that person's truths are and feelings are in this. That's the other in the communication. And the last one is the third part, which is the context. What are we talking about? What is the communication about? So we're going to see several different styles moving forward. And when we look at the big picture, we see these aspects of communication and what these styles are doing. So we're going to move to the first style, the placator style. The placator style, as you can see, cancels out one of those aspects of communication. Reach out to the participants and ask them which style and what they know about the placator style. I'm going to explain that this is the people pleaser. This is somebody that says, forget me. I'm really sorry. I want to make sure you're going through a good time. It must have been my fault. All I want to do is please the other. So, as the people pleaser, as you can see in the three aspects of communication under the placator style, the self is canceled out, but the other and the context stay very much alive. As we move forward, we want to make sure that we are asking the participants to read some of these slides. We're going to talk about the behavior that is typical for somebody in the placator stress style. So we'd ask somebody to read this. Under stress, the placator cancels out the self, their own thoughts, their feelings, and their needs, and they make statements like, whatever you want is okay with me. I just want to make you happy. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. What is really important as we move into this section is that we are asking everybody in the class, including yourself, unless there's a medical condition, to stand up, to act these out, to model them. So we're going to go ahead and ask everybody in the class that we're going to ask everybody to stand up. We're modeling the placator style. The body language of the placator style is very much a person that wants to please. Specifically with the placator style, I'm going to model it for you. I'm going to kneel down on one knee. I'm going to have one hand rising to the heavens, another hand over my heart, and I'm going to say things like, whatever you like. It's my fault. What can I do to make it right? You can have what I have. I'm sorry. I must have done something wrong. It was me. So this is the modeling, and I'm going to let everybody say, come on down. Come on, please join me. Kneel down. Let's say what the placator says, and they'd be saying some of the similar things. So this is really important because this is the first time we're really getting people off of their seats. And the only thing we're saying is, how does the placator feel inside? So we're going to ask a volunteer to read what it says on this slide. Inside, The placater may feel taken for granted and build up resentment towards others. They might feel bad. Sooner or later they feel, when is it going to be my turn? Who's going to notice me? Again and again and again, the placater may say, forget me. But let's know what's really happening inside. And make sure that you have plenty of energy to have fun with it, to get up, and for everybody to get down on one knee at the same time. So it shouldn't be one person with another standing up. It shouldn't be any of that right now. Just everybody should get up and just feel what it feels like inside of them. They may forget everything that you say in the class, but they should remember what it feels like. So we want to make sure that that's an experiential part for them. Next, we're going to go to the blamer style. We have 3 aspects of communication. So what part is canceled out by the blamer? The other is canceled out. The blamer knows the self very well. The blamer knows the context. But the blamer's going to say, it's all your fault. It's not my fault. I know what I wanted. You're the one that messed up. You did it. Blaming can be done verbally. Blaming can be done in many different ways. It can be done non-verbally. So I'm going to tell everybody, the motto of the blamer, this is the posture of the blamer. The blamer is usually, tough face, pointing to the other, saying, it's all your fault. That's the blamer posture. And we're going to say, come on, everybody, come on up and do the blamer posture. Not at each other, not one and then the other, just everybody. And while they're doing this, you're going to say, and please join me, stand on up and do the blamer posture. And feel what it feels like. Does it feel familiar? Is it something that you're comfortable with? Is it something that you don't find familiar for you? Those are the questions you're asking. You're not asking for those answers from people. This is the experiential portion. Feel what it feels like inside. Feel if it's familiar. This is the blamer. And then you have the slide. The blamer stress style is one where the other person's needs and feelings are not counted, are not taken into account at all. And what are some of those things that the blamer says? You can ask a volunteer to read it if you'd like. You never do anything right. What is the matter with you? If it weren't for you, everything would be fine. And then ask a volunteer to read what it says and what they feel inside. Inside, the blamer may feel really lonely because often no one wants to hang out with him or her. So they do a good offense first, right? A good defense is a good offense. I'm going to get them first. There's a lot of different types of blamers, but we know that what they do is cancel out the other. Next is the computer style. These are all stress styles that we go into as we're going through these slides. See which one fits for you. See which ones you've felt before. Is it just one that you revert to regularly during stressful situations? Or do you have one that you use in different spaces and with different people? Maybe one that you use more at work and one that you use more at home. And it's very common to use many of these stress styles. What's sometimes less common is identifying them ourselves, knowing when we're using them, realizing we're using them, and realizing that oftentimes it's the stress styles or how we handle a situation that causes more distance or causes more of an issue than the issue. So we have the computer style. In the computer style, we have self is crossed out, how I feel, what's true for me, what I'm going through, crossed out. What others crossed out, what the other person's going through, what the other person feels. The only one that's there is the context. So a computer might be more of a person that keeps a straight face, right? Is only saying, the cool stuff, watching their words, choosing their words carefully. So in their stressful situation, computer stands like a steel rod is going all the way up their spine. And their face, totally blank. What the computer in essence is saying, and you can see here that under stress, the computer is often calm, cool, collected, careful to choose the right words and make statements like. So you're going to ask everybody stand up, come on up. Stand straight with a steel rod right up your spine. Straight face. And the computer says things like, if you look carefully, you might notice that this is right and this is wrong. You might notice the way it is written. I'm fine. I have nothing to be upset about. There's many computers that use this as a way to avoid their feelings, to avoid your feelings. We can ask a volunteer to read, what's going on inside a computer. And they'll read the slide. Inside, the computer may decide, I will not share my feelings, and I don't know what to do with your feelings either. At the end of the day, we have somebody who is too scared to deal with feelings at all, their own or yours. The less stressed style of communication is the distractor style. You can see in the 3 aspects of communication, the distractor style cancels out the self, the other, and the context. That distractor doesn't want to deal with any of it. Not the feelings, not you, not the truths, not the context. I don't want to deal with this at all. This kind of communication, you can see and somebody can read, they ignore everything. All the feelings and the problem. You may hear statements like, we go ahead and let everybody know. Come on up, stand up, and please feel free to do that at home. Actually, more than feel free. Please stand up and try it. This is a distractor. Right? Imagine talking to somebody and they're ready to go somewhere else. They say things like, problem? What problem? I forgot to pay the electric bill. Let's go to the movies. So we have everybody in the class standing up, doing this and reading the sort of things that would be read. And you're making sure to let them know, see if this feels familiar to you. So you can recognize it in yourself or you can recognize it in somebody else. And ask somebody to read. How does the distractor really feel inside? Inside, the distractor may feel frightened, confused, distrustful, and believes, I don't know what to do. So, we have the placator, the blamer, the computer, the distractor. And this is all originated from Virginia Satir. Realizing that these are the 4 basic stress styles that people suddenly use when they're dealing with stress. Not only do they use these, but it generally causes much more pain than the context itself. Honestly, there's so many traumas, challenges, situations that people can get through. The unthinkable that people can get through. But it's how they handle that situation. As we move forward, we're going to explain a role play exercise. Everybody in the class will be asked to do a role play. They'll be divided into groups of 4. But first, before every single exercise and everything we do all across the curriculum, we're going to do a model. Just like we modeled each of those postures, we're going to invite 4 people up to the front of the class so that they can show what this exercise looks like. So they have the 4 stress styles of communication up on the PowerPoint, and we ask 4 people to come up. What we're going to do is come up with a scenario that they might typically go through. And this is literally speaking about the people in your class. If they're participants, then we can pick something, in their families. If they're couples, if they're premarital, it would need to be something that the people in your class are relating to. If you're teaching a class full of nurses, we're going to be talking about something that might happen in a hospital or in a nursing situation. If the people in your class are full of social workers, the people in your class are full of family members, please keep in mind that these should not be this should not be a blanket exercise that you use for each of your classes. It should be a situation that they might truly go through, that they relate to, that is common for them. So you have 4 people come up to the front of the class. No couple should be in the same group. So all the couples get broken up for this. So what you're going to instruct them to do is give them a scenario, or they choose a scenario that they relate to. So let's say the daughter comes home from school and says she's not going to go to college, and you have two caretakers or one, who knows, two older family members, the daughter and a friend, and they're going through this conversation. But what they're actually going to go through is you're going to direct them to choose a stress style off of the PowerPoint. Don't let anybody know which stress style. So everybody just look at the board and pick one of those stress styles. And when I say begin, you're going to go and get into a conversation and try to resolve the situation at hand, whatever that might be. Maybe it's a car accident. Maybe it's, medicine in a nursing situation, whatever that might look like. So when I say start the conversation in whatever stress style that you chose without telling anybody else. In about a minute's time or 30 seconds, I'm going to say switch. When I say switch, all four people are going to look back and are going to pick another stress style to engage in. Same scenario, keep going, trying to resolve the issue. I'm going to do that 4 times so that each person can go through each of the stress styles and acting them out. And at the very end of it all, after I've said switch again and switch again, I'm going to turn to them, I'm going to turn to the participants and ask them, what got resolved? What did you guys see? And honestly, for the most part, usually nothing gets resolved. There's somebody blaming, there's somebody being a distractor, heading out the door, there's somebody people pleasing, there's, somebody being a computer, not dealing with any of the feelings. And things don't really get resolved at all. And it's evident, and it's so evident when you do this exercise. So now you divide the rest of the class, making sure that a couple is not in a group together. So that's really important. Every single couple is split up. But there's groups of 4, and they have a scenario that they relate to, and they try to resolve it by using each of the different stress styles every time you say switch. So now they've really experienced what it's like to even engage in resolving a conflict using these stress styles. There's nothing wrong with any of these stress styles. That's what's really, really important. After you debrief of the role play, how did it go for you? What did you guys see? How did that feel? We want to make sure that everybody knows that there's nothing wrong with these stress styles. They're stress styles. That's what comes out when we get stressed sometimes. What's important though is that we start recognizing them, we start identifying them, we start seeing what else we can do, especially if our goal is to have stronger relationships, especially if we never wanted to create distance. Now learning that those things create distance or create unresolved conflict, we can now identify it in ourselves or in others. And maybe even we can identify it in ourselves and others and just know that right now is not the time to try to resolve conflict. At least not like that. The next slide, we want to know that it's important. Our body language is important. As part of communication, if we're saying something that we want to take that is genuine, that we want to be soft with somebody, but our face is saying something else, they need to match. It's just about us being aware of how we're communicating, of what we're relaying to that other person. So that's body language in a nutshell. So now we get to a few different postures and a few different exercises. So we let everybody know. Everybody, if you guys can please get up. We always want to be in a room that the chairs can move around easily. So we ask them to sit back to back. So they can turn their chairs around, sit back to back. Make sure that you have at least about a foot in between them at least. They should not be able to lean their head against the other person. They should have definite space between them. And have a conversation. You can ask them to have a conversation about their morning. You can just let them choose whatever conversation they want to have. But say have a conversation in this position for the next 30 seconds or a minute. So give them time. Let them speak like that, back to back, just like you see in this slide. And then ask them, how did that feel? Did it feel familiar? There are so many times, especially now with social media, with technology, with the internet, with so many other things really drawing our attention and vying for our attention in every which way they can, that we speak with our partners without even looking up. We're reading the newspaper or reading the news on our phones or on the internet. Sometimes we might be in another room altogether and we never even look up. And being back to back, you're going to hear things like, it was hard to hear him or her. I wasn't comfortable. It didn't make for a good conversation. I can barely hear, see, or really be involved. Yet, there's so many people day in and day out that have conversations like this. So we go to the next slide. We say, okay, somebody sit and the other person stand up. Have a conversation like that for a while. Give them 30 seconds to a minute. Say, okay, switch. And if you're at home with a partner, please. Or if you're at work and you have somebody around you, please have a seat and try this exercise. When we switch, we have the other person standing, and whoever was standing before is now sitting down. Go ahead and have a conversation. Okay, we're going to say stop. Tell me how it went. How did that feel? Was that comfortable for you? Where do you feel this being familiar? And like we see in the picture, that's often the way we speak with our children. So many times in life, we don't even notice. We walk into a room and somebody's behind a desk and we're speaking with them right over them. There's this unconscious feeling that's still there of somebody either hovering over you, speaking down to you, or anything of that sort. So it's really important to let them experience that and to point that out. Because as we move forward, we're going to see these stress styles of communication. When we're talking about bonding, emotional openness, and physical closeness, and we're talking about all these stress styles, let's see where that goes. Right? When we want to bond, but the placater and distractor is really running. They're running from their own feelings, or the distractor is running out the door. We're talking about bonding, but we have somebody like the computer and the distractor that in a sense freezes. They freeze over. They're clamming up. They don't want to deal with that emotional openness. They're pretty frightened about it. Again, we're talking about bonding, the emotional openness and physical closeness. And when we have somebody like the blamer, we're talking about controlling. Controlling does not take a space and place in a relationship that feels safe, in a relationship that can be vulnerable and open. You can't be vulnerable and open. So each of these stress styles, you can see, causes a real issue with the bonding. So now we go back to that relationship roadmap. If we are using these stress styles and we can't identify them with enough time to say, I want to do something different, we have to understand that we are slowly moving toward the pain side. We're not creating that bonding that we need. So we want to introduce you. We want you to introduce your participants to a congruent style. You can see these two sitting at the same level, knee to knee, hand to hand, looking at each other's eyes. There isn't one person looking the other way. There isn't one person standing up doing something else. They're not back to back. There isn't one person dominant or domineering in a standing over position. They're eye to eye. When we've moved into these peer relationships, it's really important that we make sure that the other person feels safe and that we feel safe, and how to do that for that other person. So we ask everybody, sit with your partner, turn your chairs towards each other, get close, feel free to touch knees, feel free to hold hands and look into each other's eyes. That's what this congruent style is. Even working with veterans, with singles, they don't all need to be couples. We're all here as siblings in a sense. We're brothers, we're sisters, we're people of this world, and I can be there for you like you can be there for me. So don't be shy about asking people in your class to turn to each other and sit toward each other and hold hands and look at each other's eyes, whether they're the same sex or not the same sex. If they don't feel comfortable, of course, by all means. But you as the instructor have to be the first one knowing that this is comfort. This is comfort at its best. You're not asking somebody to do something uncomfortable. If they don't find comfort with it, that's something else. But feel happy to bring this to somebody. Feel comfortable saying, everybody, turn to the person next to you. And let's get close. Let's hold hands. Let's look at each other's eyes. Let's be there for the other. So we're going to go over the congruent style. You can ask somebody to read. For self. These are all positive parts of each of those stress styles. For self, you can ask somebody to read. I can speak on my own behalf. Which one of those stress styles speaks on their own behalf? The blamer does really well. Knows very much the side of self. So let's go to other. I can have empathy and show concern for how it is for the other. Which stress style has that positive part? The placater. The placater says, oh my gosh, I feel for you. Context. Together we can bring our resources to solving whatever problems or challenges we face. Who is the one that concentrates on context? You have the computer, definitely knows context. The blamer and the placater as well. So each of those stress styles still has something positive. The blamer can say what's true for him or herself and speak for themselves. The placater can speak for what's true for the other and have empathy for that person. All two with the computer also have the context, know what's going on, and want to tackle that. And then you have the distractor. The distractor brings a little fun to the relationship. The important thing is that even if you have fun or distract or take a moment of a break, we want to make sure that we're coming back to the table and dealing with anything at hand. So the congruent style takes the positive parts of each of the stress styles. And that's what we're learning. We're learning to hold hands. We're learning to have emotional openness. We're learning to have that connection. So we sit in front of each other, we hold hands, we look eye to eye, and that's how we start our conversations that matter. So we talked a few minutes ago about the posture. Let's go ahead and at home or in your classrooms, get everybody together to do so and have a conversation. How did that feel? We can talk about so many things when we feel safe to do so.